So now where do we go from here? What I actually have here now, if we just count these guys here, we're not going to count these anymore. They're already put in. What I have is a 1, 2 by 1, 2, 3, 4 by 1, 2. So basically at this point, I've got this puzzle. I've got a 2 by 2 by 4. A 2 by 2 by 4 where these guys are all in and these guys have to come in. So these pieces here correlate with these pieces over here. So when solving these now, it's just like solving the top and the bottom of a 2 by 2 by 4, and that's done with domino strategies and domino techniques. It's exactly the same. So these two over here correspond, or these four over here correspond to these, and these correspond to these two completely, including the fact that this and this are correlated with each other. Now, so here's a strategy that I use with the last two layers, the top and the bottom, of a 2 by 2 by 4. Again, ignoring the top parts over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a side. I'm going to see which two are in the proper configuration. Well, we like this, orange and yellow here, and yellow and red. And you might get lucky enough to have something like that. So this is in, all of these, and it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that are in. You can look at it as these two edges are in. So what edge goes over here? Well, this is orange, but this is the wrong one because this is orange and yellow. These two don't belong here. Hence this doesn't belong here. So what I'm going to do is try to get everything from the top layer to the bottom layer that needs to happen with that, with a quick swapping algorithm of corners. So let's find the orange and the white, which is over here. But this is the wrong orange and white. You can see how happy this orange and white piece is to be over here because it's properly configured. So this belongs over here. So here's another orange and white. This does not want to be up here. This wants to be down here, because once I put it down here, it'll be flipped. And that flipping algorithm, if I were to take this and put it down here, would be 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R. Take my word for it, it flipped these guys. 2R, UI, 2R. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I want you to notice what happens when I did that. When this came down to here, 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, I ended up getting placement parity across this center over here, across these sides. So you have to bear in mind that that's going to happen. Don't really want to scramble this quite yet. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to move this down to here collectively. In my 2 by 2 by 4, this moves and this moves. These I don't have to move over here. So it's going to be 2R U, 2R UI, 2R. And as you can see, this is now where it should be. But we caused a similar placement parity of the centers over here. So what we have to do is we have to bear that in mind and not worry about that. We just move to the next step. Move this over and see what belongs to this. Now I'm keeping it on this side. I don't because the next algorithm that I do will fix this placement parity with both sides. So the one that's supposed to be here is white, but what's the other color that goes with the white over here? Well, it's going to be the white that goes with this center. Now understand, the center color here is not these two. These got flipped. It's going to be these two over here. So the next one is supposed to be white and not orange, but red. So I have to remember that, put this over here, and I'm looking for the white and red to put over here. See if it's on the top. Is it? And it is. White and red, and this is the correct one. Again, don't let this configuration fool you. This will come here, this will come here, and these two will once again flip. So 2R U, 2R UI, 2R, and all is right with the world, and the bottom part is in. Now sometimes it's not quite as simple as that. Sometimes you may end up with a situation where they're all in, but they all happen to be flipped. Here's what I would do in that situation. Okay, let's say you have it down here. You have everything in, these guys are all in, this is all good, but you have it down to one piece that needs to come in. And you see that it's an orange and it's a white. Well, it's supposed to be this one, right? This belongs down here, but I know if I do that, I'm going to end up with placement parity. All of these will be in, but I'll end up with parity before I move to the next layer. That could potentially cause some confusion, and I would encourage you not to do that. So what I would do first, quite simply, is don't move this in yet, bump it out of the way, move in a dummy piece, because a dummy piece will induce this placement parity, this flipping, and then put in your correct piece to get it back. It's really as simple as that. So I'd go, this needs to come down here. Let's put a dummy piece in, 2R U, 2R UI, 2R, Now that I've done that, now I can move the correct one in position and move it down, which will move this back to our U, to our UI, to R. So nothing too complicated. So now the last layer. So here's what to do about the last layer. In the vast majority of cases, so much so that I think it's all we need to talk about, you're going to have two edge pieces that are in. In this case, it's right over here. So in this case, it's two yellows. Any one that you see that's in, these are automatically going to be the same, are going to be correct. Why? Well, because these two edge pieces here, these two that are in conjunction with each other, have to be in the proper place because they belong up here. I already put all these guys in. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the one that has both in, move it to the correct side, and put that to your left. Then we're going to do effectively the corner swap algorithm. This corner swap algorithm will take these two pieces and swap it with these two pieces. So this orange and white will end up over here, and this white and red will end up over here. So again, 2x2x4 strategies. And that's 2R, again, we're still doing it like a 2x2x4, so we're moving with here. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R, and then go UI and D, 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R, and then you move this back with the DI. You'll be able to see that. And there you have it. So everything will be in. Now, to those who know the 2x2 crunch thing over here, what I did, that last corner swap, I actually did when I was putting it in as a 2x2. So now you've got all these guys. Okay, so now we're going to do what? How about these guys over here? We almost have all of our centers in. Well, this is where we get into the next, the final association between pieces because it was bandaged. I want you to notice that there's another association between various pieces, and that's these corner pieces. No matter what I do, this edge piece over here and this middle corner triangle, middle center corner piece here, never comes away from each other. So I can turn it here. These two are still in association with each other. I can move it here. And these two are following right with each other. I can go here, and they're following each other. So take my word for it, no matter what I do, and how I turn it, and where I go, this never separates with this. And that's true for any of these. This never separates from here, this here, which means as much as I scrambled it, there's always going to be an association with this triangle piece and this, which means I can just solve for these guys, and it'll drag this with it. So in the case of green, let's find a green piece here. This red and orange, red and yellow rather, will always drag this green triangle with it. So once this comes over to here, this green piece will just automatically come over here. So what that means is I can ignore it. I'm just going to solve for these edge pieces over here, and these small little triangular corners will follow it wherever it goes, which means that there's absolutely no difference between the scramble and the solve from this and this. It looks more impressive, but it doesn't contribute to anything. The only way to make it more challenging like that, to separate these out, is if I variably bandage it. I turn it into a planetary series. That's what happened with the crazy 3x3 plus series, that if I turn this and say this was bandaged, but if I turn this over here and this whole thing actually moved, then all of those associations would end. This piece here, centerpiece, would now move away from the centerpiece in a way that it can't do if it's a pure circle. It can't move away from it. It would now be able to move away from it. So too, these pieces, this and this, would be able to move away from each other if this one moved, if this center moved, but this didn't. These would move away from each other, and so too this and this would move away from each other also. Now when I first got the planetary series with the circle 3x3, I just wanted a circle 3x3 like so many people. But to solve it was really not much different from a supercube. They really had to variably bandage the centers in order to make it more challenging. And so too, if they were to do that with a 4x4 and come out with like a Mercury crazy 4x4, it would be similarly challenged, because by turning this, if this center moved with it and this one did not, then I'm going to take away all of those happy, easy associations, and then it would become a puzzle that would be much more difficult, because then I'd have to design algorithms where I can move these guys around. independent of each other, or move these guys around independent of each other. And that was the true challenge of the planetary series. But with this puzzle, you don't have to worry about it. So the next step then is I simply do this as a 4x4. Simply do it as this guy, starting off with edge reduction. So with edge reduction, we can take a look. This over here belongs down to here. Put a dummy one on top that can be destroyed. Move this down so that these are in association with each other. Notice I'm not going to do any issues, any problems with my circle. So I'm just going to move this out to the side. This stays the same. Move this down. This stays the same. Bring this in. And all I did was just move this back up. So you're not going to change anything. Now, as I'm doing this, you're going to be pulling these away from their respective centers, but that's okay. This was solved. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to change the orbits that this belongs into. You can just move it back. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and putting in edges. Move this out of the way. This is already reduced. Bring this down here. Bump it out of the way. Turn this side down here. Replace it with this and bring it up. And I'll just keep going based on that. Again, this is 4x4 strategy. If you don't know what I'm doing right now, I can point you in the direction of how to solve a 4x4. But my assumption is that you didn't buy this puzzle unless you knew how to solve a 4x4. So I'm just going to keep going. Again, don't worry about these. This will always maintain the orbits that they're supposed to be. I put them in association with each other. That was part of my evil plan. So looking... This is going to come over here, and here, down. The good thing about the edge reduction of a 4x4 is it goes fairly fast. It's not something that generally takes a lot of time. And again, I'm throwing caution to the wind. I'm not destroying anything that I reduced, so you need not worry. Bring this into position, and I think this will take us to the last two edges pretty quickly. And turn. Okay. So now all the edges are reduced. You didn't have to do that fancy algorithm for that. Now in terms of the centers, you don't have to worry. Just focus on one and keep turning until you get everything in. If you get everything in on one, you'll get it in on the others, except for over here. Okay, so now all these are in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do my circle solve, which is the same as a 4x4 supercube solve at this point, now that these are reduced. So I'm going to start off with the green side over here. And I'm going to move this one up, but I can't just move it up like this because I bumped this out of the way. So this has to come down to greet this over here. So I'm going to move this down, put this out of the way. My whole key is to move this on the bottom so that I can move this guy in like so. This is in here, and now move it up. So circle strategy. Let's move this to the bottom. So we're going to move the color that you want up here to the bottom here, out of the way. Move it up. Okay, now this is going to come over to here, but let's bring this down to the bottom here to meet this green. So bring this to the bottom, move this in, and I'll bring this up. This will circle all the way up to here. All right, so just kind of position things where you want to put this on the bottom. So move this up like so, bring it down. So now this is on the bottom, get it out of the way, then move back up what we just put down. All right, this goes where the yellow one is. So move this green one down here. This is, again, 4x4 supercube technique. Lastly, we've got this green one here, green side here. And once again, put this just to the side of the color it's supposed to be at. Move this green circle down, green center down, so that we can match this up over here. Move it in, so this is good here. Move it up to where this circle can match up to here. Okay, so we have the cross over here. Hope that wasn't too fast. Now corners, we just put in like any corner from any puzzle that you know of. R-I-D-I-R-D. That's a technique that I'm using with this. Put this underneath where it's supposed to be, which is over here, and just keep going R-I-D-I-R-D until things are appropriate. So this one over here, green, orange, and white, comes just over to here, just below here. R-I-D-I-R-D. And finally here, this comes just down over here, R-I-D-I-R-D. And you probably have a quicker way to do it, so do I, but just for illustrative purposes. Okay. So now we're going to show what's going to happen as we put these guys in. It's just going to work as we put these edges in. So put them in the usual way that you have figured out or learned. This needs to come over to here. Now notice this has the green one in tow, so this will automatically come down here. U, R, U, I, R, I, U, I, F, I, U, F, and there it is, and there it is. So we keep going with that. Okay, this comes over here, dragging this green one in tow. So as you can see with these three different associations, this complicated puzzle is really just an amalgamation of three puzzles. A super 4x4, a 2x2, and a 2x2x4. And that's all it is. This comes down to here. Now another thing to bear in mind with this is there's a certain parity that you'll never get with this puzzle that you get with 4x4s. And as I'm doing this, can you guess which parity I'm talking about? A parity that will never happen. Now you'll get other kinds of parities, but not this particular one. And down. Okay, so now you can see that because all these edges are in, this whole thing is solved. All these circles are solved. Now the parity that I'm talking about is the kind of parity, the annoying parity you get with a 4x4, where you have three edges rotated up and one edge rotated down. You're not going to get that with this piece, ever, with this puzzle. And the reason is, the reason that you get that kind of a parity is because of the fact that you can variably put centers in wherever you want them to go. Because of that, you might end up reducing layers that's not properly coordinated with the centers, long story short. Here, notice these centers had particular places to go. The solve of this was not like the centers of a 4x4, the reduction of a 4x4. Because of the associations of these centers, you'll never get a situation where you're going to orient or reduce the edges in the wrong way. So because of that, you're never going to get that. Here you see the line where you have two over here. We just have to flip these guys, which is perfectly fine. So because of the known association, because of how fixed these are, if a core is not fixed to the center, then you can potentially reduce the edges out of coordination with the center. Now these centers aren't necessarily fixed to the core, but they are fixed to each other, so to speak. So because of that, you'll never get that. So F, R, U, R, I, U, I, F, I. But there will be other kinds of parities that you might get. What I have here is the typical configuration that you're going to have. The typical configuration is you're going to have one that's completely reduced on both edges and three that are not. If that's the case, then go ahead and do the algorithm that just rotates these guys around. It's the same one that we did to flip these edges. What you're going to do is you're going to hold it here with this R. It's the same algorithm. R, U, R, I, U, R, 2U, R, I. Keep doing that with the one that's supposed to be in, that's already in front of you, and these guys will eventually rotate in the proper position. R, U, R, I, U, R, 2U, R, I, and there it is, and everything is fine. And what you'll also notice, which I forgot to point out, is these circles are in as well. And these circles automatically will be in also. Then it's just a question of getting your corners in. Now, here's another situation that you might run into. A situation where this is in, and this is in, two are in, and two are out. They might not be across from each other like this, they might be next to each other. So maybe you discovered it like this. Okay, so you see this is in. Ah, what do we do about this? Well, this is the kind of 4-layer supercube parity that you might end up with. When this happens, go ahead and do this, hold any of these in front of you until the two that are in are opposite each other. So you want to rotate it to where the yellow one is in. So keep this in front of you. Don't have one next to it that's in. All right. Okay. So we see that we have these two that are opposite. Now, to those of you who saw my Rubik's 180 tutorials, and I also did one with a supercube, you know that there is an algorithm that can flip two edges, and that's the 2U, 2R, 2F, and then 2U, 2U, then 2F, 2R, 2U, something like that. Anyway, if you remember from the Rubik's 180, the supercube version, I could do that. It will flip these two, but it's going to have really nasty effects on my centers. It's going to kind of put them out. So although I can do that on a non-supercube, with a supercube I can't do that. If I were to do that, well, here's what happens. So let's say I wanted to flip these two using that algorithm to swap two pieces over here. You know, let's say I were to do this over here, 2U, 2R, 2F, 2U, 2U, 2F, 2R, 2U. That'll give me a clean swap between these guys. But what if I tried to do that on a supercube? Well, let's see what happens. 2U, 2R, 2F, 2U, 2U, 2F, 2R, 2U. Well, it swapped it, see? But it messed up my centers in ways that I couldn't even predict and I can't even imagine. So let's very quickly get this back and recognize we simply can't do that. 2U, 2U, 2F, 2R, 2U. So here's what you have to do. I have to find a way of flipping these without causing a bunch of swaps. Now it is possible. I'm perfectly capable, and it's completely obeys the law of cubes to do this, because that's like swapping these two and swapping these two. So as long as I know it's possible, I can design, or there can be found an algorithm that can do that. Here's the bad news. The bad news is it's a long one. Here's the good news. It's really based upon the URF concept. But instead of saying 2U, 2R, 2F, it's just going to be U's and R's and F's, not the 2's. And we alternate clockwise with counterclockwise. So it's going to be a something, something I, something, something I. If you can remember that, then it's not going to be so bad. So we're going to start off with our U's are going to be in the center, and then the U's after that are going to be on the top. So it's going to be UI through the center. So UI, R, FI. So we're still doing URFs. Then do it again, but just the opposite. And now the U is on the top. So we have U, RI, F. Then we do our bridge, so to speak. We'll do a middle U and a middle D. And then finish it off with FIRUs. So FI, R, UI, then repeat it, but just the opposite, so it's F, RI, and then finish it up with a D for done, and bang, you did it. You flipped both of those. So you did it. So that's how you can do it. That's how you can flip those. So now that you've done that, you can go ahead and get these corners in. Any that are already in position, that would be this one here. Keep this here, and this algorithm will rotate these guys around. That's U, R, UI, LI, U, RI, UI, L. I think once more. U, R, UI, LI, U, RI, UI, L, and we're good. Now we just RI, these into submission. Hold it over here. So I got the one that's fine to the left, really doesn't matter, and just keep orbiting around. RI, DI, R, D, RI, DI, R, D. Worry not about what's happening. Move this in position. RI, DI, R, D, RI, DI, R, D. Remember to finish up with that D before moving to the next set. RI, DI, R, D, RI, DI, R, D, and just move this where it's supposed to be, and you're done. Your circle puzzle is finished. This is solved the same way, exactly the same way. This is solved, well, a little different. It's really the same thing. Do your 2x2, then these guys have to be reduced, and that's more by positioning. If anyone has a question or would like me to do this one, the type 1, let me know, I can do that. But otherwise, there you have it. Very fun puzzle. You actually get 3 puzzles in one. 2x2, a 2x2x3, and a circle, or rather a super 4x4. All right, grab yourself one of these. Fun puzzle. Thanks for watching.